My name's Nicola Glynn. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm a complementary therapist and neurodevelopment therapist. And this is my page, Organised Mind, which is really predominantly neurodevelopment and trauma-related issue. And it's been a long time since I've made a video, so I'm going to keep saying so I'm sorry about that. A bit out of practice. But I wanted to talk today about trauma and what it is and how I can help you really with it and with the problems that it causes. So trauma is essentially, we think of trauma as being going to war or a bomb going off next to you or a terrible car accident, which it all is. But in addition, it can just be in a difficult relationship, an abusive relationship, or in a situation where we define trauma as being in a situation where you feel that your life is potentially at risk and you are unable to escape from that. So that covers lots and lots of situations, obviously things like accidents, but also if you are a child with an abusive parent, or your perception is that parent is abusive, or you're in a relationship and your perception is that that relationship is abusive. So it's really about the perception of the person who's affected more than it is about the opinion of other people. So with trauma, there are two sorts of trauma that we particularly look at. Post-traumatic stress, which is usually related to a one-off incident, or complex post-traumatic stress, which is usually associated with ongoing many incidents. So usually that to do with life circumstances and difficult relationships. And most trauma comes from relationship trauma because relationships are difficult. So what I've done really is having trained as a neurodevelopment therapist and working with primitive reflexes. One of the main reflexes that I work with when people bring their children to me or come to see me as adults are retained fear reflexes. And the retained fear reflexes that I mostly see are retained fear paralysis reflex and the retained tomorrow reflex. Now, the fear paralysis reflex shuts your system down. So we see that in children who are very good, very compliant, children who have, and adults, obviously this applies to as well, who have selective mutism, perfectionism. And the other reflex that I mostly see is a retained Moro reflex, which is the one that's really linked to the fight, flight, attack or run away. Now, working with these with neurodevelopment systems, rhythm movement training, or some of the other systems I use are really effective and can really help to calm the system down and allow the brain to then make connections and development to happen as it should. But particularly with adults, I've found that there is more really that we can do by looking at working with the trauma specifically rather than purely looking at the primitive reflexes. So on that basis, I've undertaken more training over lockdown. Lockdown did have it up like, and now I'm qualified as a trauma therapist. Now, trauma therapy comes really from sensory motor psychotherapy and internal family systems, which are two big newish ways of looking at working with psychological problems. Internal family systems is particularly interesting as a way of looking at therapy, looking at talking therapy without having to be re-traumatized by talking about your problem. And that's probably the key area that I want to talk about this afternoon, and I'll try and keep it short, is that one of the great things about rhythmic movement training and neurodevelopment particularly is that we can address trauma and retained fear reflexes without it having to be a talking therapy. It's a physical therapy, it's a movement program that allows those reflexes to integrate through movement. Now, when we're looking at trauma therapy, when we're looking at dealing with trauma, one of the issues with traditional therapy is that talking about your trauma is re-traumatizing, or can be re-traumatizing. And one of the reasons why physical therapies work so well, or what we call somatic therapies using the body, is that when you have a traumatic event age 7 and above, what happens is that your whole system is about staying alive. So remember, trauma is seen as a threat to life. The whole thing is about staying alive. So if your system is trying to keep you alive and you're in a traumatic event, what happens is that your amygdala, which is part of your limbic brain, which is your emotional brain, switches on. And most of the rest of your brain switches off. So the thinking part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, switches off. Your hippocampus, which deals with memory storage, switches off. And because your thinking brain is switched off, and particularly the left side of your brain, which is to do with logic and processing, switches off, that's also the area that deals with language. So what happens is you're dealing with a potentially life-threatening situation. Your perception is this is potentially life-threatening. And the parts of your brain that deal with the processing and the logic of something happening has switched off, and all that's working is your amygdala and your brainstem. So your fight-flight system, the keep you alive system, your breathing and all the rest of it, that's all that's working. Which means that after something traumatic has happened, your memory may be very sketchy, or you may not have any memory of it at all. So what happens is that your body literally stores those memories, and your amygdala literally stores those memories. So consequently, when things happen afterwards that remind you of that situation, you may then get what we call body memories coming back. So somebody might walk past you in a big trench coat and you might feel a bit sick, or you might drive past a certain road and you'll feel shivery, and they're body memories of a preceding trauma. So what we look to do with somatic therapies, so therapies that deal with the body, is to release those memories that are stuck in the body so that you can process them, come to terms with them, and then be able to move on. And the other time that this is really important is that if you are under the age of 7, then the two hemispheres of your brain haven't connected up properly. Or if you're pre-verbal, if you're a baby, so horrible things happen when you're a baby or during birth or even before birth, those memories also get stuck in your body because you don't have proper access to the left hemisphere of the brain where language sits. So again, we can look at dealing with those body memories and allowing them to integrate properly, and for you to become aware of them, but in a really, really gentle, non-confrontational way. So it becomes a very gentle is really the only word I can think of, a very gentle way of being able to process things that have haunted you like for your whole life. So really that was what I wanted to talk about today, or to say that there is, if you're suffering with things, there's help out there. And I'm very happy to offer help. And I can do most of this over Zoom. Ideally, neurodevelopment we do face-to-face, and I can still do trauma therapy face-to-face as well, so that we can do it over Zoom if you'd prefer to. And obviously with social distancing, I've got visor and mask and everything's wipeable. But I think over these times where life is very stressful because of the lockdown, or because of anxiety over being exposed to the virus, or anxiety over not being exposed, and even things like the American election, which has had a big impact on everybody, all of those things of themselves are very stressful, but they can also tap into previous stressful events, so they can remind you of things that have happened in the past. And that of itself can then reignite memories and become very difficult to deal with. So if you've got any questions, I'm going to try and do a few more lives. I think they're useful. Although I don't particularly like doing them, but I think they're useful. So if you do have any questions, if there's anything you want to know, if there's anything I can help with, then do put it in the comments or send me a message, and I will endeavour to do my best. So good luck, everybody, and I will see you again. Thanks for watching.